All right, it's Monday on Daily Delivery. Patrick Reusse, Star Tribune columnist, joins me as usual. Patrick, plenty to get to this weekend. I was thinking about starting with something else, but when we joined on our morning call before we started recording, you said let's start with the NFL because I got something to get off my chest. And whenever Patrick Reusse says that, I am happy to oblige, sir. What do you need to get off your chest off of these NFL, NFC, and NFC title games?
You know what's fixed about the NFL?
What's
First of
that?
all, it disgusts me the influence referees have.
Yes.
It's more egregious than any other sport. But I was thinking about this today, actually early this morning. Baseball, we complain about baseball umpiring, but baseball is the only sport where the decisions are objective.
Yeah.
Is that not true? I mean, every other sport, hockey, basketball, and especially football, is subjective. It's up to the guy to decide whether he should call it or not. Now, in baseball, they might make it subjective, but when you look at it, it's objective, right? It's okay. He's either safe or out. It was a ball or a strike. It's objective. And what's fixed about the game is, especially the NFL, is the influence that the Mike Pereiras of the world now have, because that's fixed. That is fixed. That their commentary is, yes, there was a little bit of the receiver was held up on that play when they threw the flag. So it was a legitimate call. It was a good call. They don't tell you, nobody tells you that the same play occurred 10 previous times without a flag being thrown.
Right.
And then now they decided to call it when it's third down and the team's going to have to punt and the game is tied. They
Right.
decide to call it. They do not, they show a hold when a guy, grabs a guy in the middle of a big pile. A guy grabs a shirt on the offensive line, which has been done 45 times in the game to that point. And yet the referees say, okay, this is a very important part of the game, so I'm going to call it. And then they say, well, it was a hold. Well, okay. It's fixed. It's fixed because they show you the Patrick Mahomes getting pushed when he gently pushed when he gets out of bounds. They don't show you the block in the back on number 17 on the kick return that set up the whole thing, right?
Right.
It set up. They don't show you that. They
Which
don't.
way
They
they
don't
were
go
going
back.
they were going crazy about that one, by the way. The
Yeah,
Bengals special teams coach is going crazy on that one.
yeah, but they don't go back and show that to you and say, "Well, we blew that one." So the fix here is they come in and say, "Well, they got that one right," or they they run a play, and 15 seconds later they get together and say, "You get to do it over again."
Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah.
Because the guy's okay. The guy down there is signaling, starting to signal. It had no impact on the play, and they get the do over. I was very disappointed in Zach Taylor after the game because he handled it with class. He didn't say anything. I was hoping he'd come out and say, "This, how did this collection of clowns end up refereeing this game?" And I don't even. I guess here's my problem. Is what I'm trying to say is they want you to say, well, all the calls were right. Well, they're never put into perspective of when they were called and how this one differentiated from the other 25 holdings that took place in the game. They never say, that's probably happened 20 other times in the game and they didn't call it. So anyway, I think NBA, NFL refereeing drives me nuts. And you know what, of course, also drives me nuts is the review system and the whole thing. And where was the instant review thing, the new review? What do they call it? Accelerated?
Oh yeah,
What?
the eye in the sky kind of thing where
The
it's like
eye on the
after
sky.
we gathered
Where
really
were they
quickly.
when Devontae Smith dropped the ball on
Yeah.
fourth down? I know they were smart enough to rush. When the guy in New York sees them rushing to get set, he should know something's wrong and look at it, shouldn't he?
Sure.
And I mean, he dropped the ball, and it was fourth down, so they get no points there. So Kansas City lucked out. Yesterday I thought they were not. They were, that was a pretty even game, and they got the breaks. So they ended up winning the other one. And the 49ers got the short end of the stick, but they had no chance anyway. I don't even think that even if Purdy had played, that San Francisco was going to win that game, because they couldn't. They couldn't protect their quarterback. They couldn't stop that defensive line of the Eagles. But that was, again, egregiously different in the interpretations of the officials against one team as opposed to the other, I thought. I think they ended up with 12 penalties. The 49ers got a little out of control, and the last 3 penalties were just because they were mad at the world. But
right.
But it was, I don't know how you make them better, except my theory has always been, you get the Hockleys of the world, and they give the boys a speech, and they say before the game, and say, let's go out there and call as many penalties as we can, fellas. That's the rah-rah. The theory should be, when in doubt, don't throw it.
Of course,
instead
yeah.
of when in doubt, throw it, especially with the game on the line. So
I agree with that.
That was a nice dive by Pat Mahomes too, but I don't blame him. So
no, I mean, that was borderline. I think that was, by the letter of the law, that one was a penalty. I was going crazy, like you said, before that, even with, the influence, like you said, of how these things happen all the time and then get called at select times, including, like you said, the third down right after the Chiefs got gifted a new chance at third down because they blew the whistle and redid the play. That was the first of I can't remember if it was pass interference or defensive illegal contact or holding on that play. Gave them a new set of downs. Now they got off the field after that, so it didn't completely influence the game. But like when you get the automatic first down off of this contact that happens in the defensive backfield pretty much every play, that's the one that drives me crazy, where it's like you can call this anytime. You're calling it right here. This is the influence on the game. Those first downs mean a huge change in the trajectory of a game.
Yeah, it wasn't that it was 3rd and 16 or something, wasn't it? I don't know.
I think it was 3rd and 9, but yeah, it was long.
Yeah, it was long, and Mahomes wasn't. He was obviously limited. He wasn't as sharp as he usually is, and they were struggling. They were struggling to move the ball. So I don't know. They just the officials. I don't know how that guy's crew ended up. Weren't they like? I thought they were reprimanded once this year. That maybe it was other guy this year but it's an all-star crew too, right? Don't they? I think they change them, don't they? I don't think they bring in the same crew that they have. They get different back judges and stuff like that. But anyway, I just think Mike Pereira said all the calls were right. Yeah, okay, Mike. How about the block in the back? Did you tell us? Didn't you tell them, hey guys, show this egregious block in the back on the kick return that they didn't call? Mike, come on, show us that. So
take a playcation to Mystic Lake. With 24/7 gaming, the good times never have to end. And you can satisfy your cravings at our restaurants and bars. Or relax in one of our luxurious hotel rooms. Those that play together, stay together. And don't forget to join Club M so you can spark new memories and bask in the rewards along the way. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
It's too bad, because that was a good game. I mean, what we're talking about right now is the officiating, but that was a pretty good game. I mean, there was some sloppiness, but those were 2 really good teams. And the Eagles, by the way, what a path they get to the Super Bowl, right? They get to play the Giants, who, if you only watch the Giants play the Vikings, you might have thought the Giants were awfully good, but the Giants were not all that good. And then you get to play the 49ers' 4th string quarterback, and then their 3rd string guy has to come back in and he can't throw the
Can't
ball.
pass.
Like
Can't
what?
throw the pass.
Never seen that, but I've never seen that before.
No. Well, there was a famous thing in 1966, Mike, long before you weren't here. Johnny Unitas and I think Earl Morrow was his backup, but maybe somebody else was for the Colts. And this is the way the NFL was back then. No practice squads, none of that
Right.
nonsense. They were the only two quarterbacks. They both got hurt. Tom Matty, who was a running back, played quarterback the last two games of the regular season and the playoff game against the Packers. And they only lost 13-10 to the Packers, but
Wow.
he could throw it about 10 yards, and then they ran the ball a lot, and the games were a lot lower scoring and not explosive. But I was thinking of all of us old people were all saying, bring in Tom Matty. Tom died a few years ago, but bring in Tom Matty. It was the same. They tried McCaffrey on the one play, but I mean, the game was over by then. You had to feel sorry for San Francisco because they'd won 10, 11 in a row, something like that. But and the other thing is, who decided Johnson had a concussion was that he was going to get up and play, I think, and then they called from upstairs. So
yeah,
that was a game when you could have used the old smelling salt sack. Let's get out there, buddy. We got nobody else. I looked up his wiki page, by the way. It would have been a great story if he'd stayed in and made it a competitive game. He played at the University of San Diego, the Pioneer Football League.
Wow.
One St. Thomas plays in. And from 2004 to 2007, and he's been in the league, and he's been with 14 different teams or something like that, because they always bring him in. He spent his first 4 years, I think, in Miami, did I see? And then after that, it's just 3-4 teams a year because they just bounce him back and forth.
Wow.
Practice squad. He would have been a fantastic story if he'd stayed in and been able to do something. But anyway, the Eagles there, man, they got their defenses. They got an endless, the same thing when they won the Super Bowl. They got an endless supply of defensive linemen. They got like 8 of them. Right? They did last time. They had about 8 of them too. So they always got somebody, Sue.
Somebody fresh. Yeah.
Yeah. Sue is a backup, plays 15 plays a game, but, you got a sack. And anyway, the Eagles look good, but it was a terrible game. It was no fun to watch. But the second game was a great game, but it just leaves you with a bad taste in your mouth when the officials decide it. So, but that's the NFL. They probably decide 25% of them during the course of a year, because their games are also close now.
Sure.
The guy who decides to make what call that he hasn't made all day long, decides 20 games a year. So anyway.
Yeah, it's amazing. The Super Bowl should be awfully good. I think I saw the opening line was pick 'em, so that tells you that people think that's a pretty good matchup, and maybe a lot of Super Bowls that are between two good teams start that way or close to that, and then they get the line moves accordingly, and Mahomes gets an extra week to get the ankle right and stuff like that. But I gotta think Philadelphia is the better team, even though they played in the weaker conference.
I agree with you. And don't you think the betters, it's kind of like the 49ers, even after their glory years, the betters like the Chiefs better than they really are. I mean, the Chiefs are always like, they were 2.5-point favorites in this game with Mahomes having a questionable ankle and the Bengals on a hot streak. So, I think the bettors just like the Chiefs. So they like Mahomes, they like the Chiefs, and they've won a lot. But I yesterday would have, if I was a bettor, if I'd gone out to St. Croix and bet,
right,
I would have not bet the first game because I didn't lie. I liked them both, and then I would have taken the Bengals and the 2.5 points, and would have felt really bad at the end.
Yes, you would have.
I would have been very upset. I would have been cursing. The NFL is fixed. It's fixed. So anyway,
instead you're just cursing it now, which is.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm not saying that the calls were all wrong. I'm saying that they're subjective. They decide when to call them. If you didn't call it 20 times today, don't call it now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's like calling penalties in hockey. It's like calling, some sort of violation in basketball where it happens a lot, but you call it in a key moment or don't call it in a key moment. But you're right, baseball, it's either safe or out, it's either ball or strike. And there's interpretations of the strike zone, but
Yes.
I don't think a guy is calling a penalty, or I'm sorry, not calling a ball or a strike any differently in the 8th inning than he does in the 4th inning. It's just his or her strike zone, and that's how they're calling it.
Yeah, that is true. Of course, the others, as the great Dick Cullum used to always say, they're up and down games. If they're up and down games, they're hard to control. They're all up and down games. Baseball is not an up and down game. So,
no.
Anyway, that's my theory, and I'm kind of a Chiefs guy. I like Andy Reid, and I like Mahomes a lot, and I knew his dad. And LaTroy Hawkins is his godfather and all that stuff. So, I mean, he's just a magnificent competitor and seems to be a good guy, and I root for him, but not in that circumstance yesterday. So.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears. I think you wrote about Gophers men's basketball over the weekend, and I got to admit, I mean, you and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago about how bad college basketball is right now. How do you look at how do you assess the state of that program? Because it's he had a task. I don't think he didn't inherit nothing from Richard Pitino, but it was not a great situation that he came into, and he's got to have patience. That's the only way to do this one, and he seems like he's got it so far, but the years start stacking up, the patience will be different, I would imagine. How do you assess where they are right now?
Well, actually, if you count the fact that he was not able to convince any of these guys to stay out of the transfer portal.
Right.
So when it was done, he had nothing left.
Correct.
I mean, Marcus Carr already had said he was leaving and going to the NBA. Pitino took Mashburn with him to New Mexico. They probably had a little name, image, and likeness thing going there, even before name, image, and likeness came into fruition. Came to be.
Right.
But and he's playing great down there. But then it just became. Then a bunch of guys transferred who went to mediocre colleges. They all decided to get out, I guess. I don't think it was because of Ben Johnson. They just all left. And Eric Curry, who was going to be a coach, grad assistant, was about the only guy had left. So last year, I mean, I talked to him the other day for about 20 minutes, and he said last year we just were trying to put together the best roster. We had to put together the best roster we could because they didn't have any recruits. They didn't have anybody coming in. And this year he said, this is the reset. This year's the reset year. So he did have a year zero, his first year,
He did, yes.
And this is the reset. And I think you thought they were going to be better this year, and people don't want injuries as an excuse. The Twins found that out, but he lost Einan and Parker Fox
right
before the season started. And once in a while, and Dawson Garcia missed a couple of games in a row. And I mean, they've had other Carrington's now probably done for the season, maybe not the season, but Payne did play, but you knew the way they played against almost beating Indiana. I mean, they played great. They just battled and fought, and they had that the skinny kid from Alexandria, who they should have. He admits they should have redshirted him, but they couldn't last year because they didn't have enough players. But he should have been in the weight room gaining 30 pounds, but instead they had to waste a year of eligibility. But you knew what was coming at Northwestern, didn't you? When they almost won on a Wednesday night, now they're going on the road. Northwestern's hot, but Northwestern actually has athletes. And I looked it up. Northwestern's got one guy was playing his 100th game. There's another guy who was playing his 110th, and they got 4 old guys, right? So,
yes.
And they got 2 or 3 real athletes, which usually doesn't happen at Northwestern. So you knew they were going to get buried, but now I don't know who they're going to beat. They can't shoot.
No.
That's I've always said,
can't even make free throws. That's the part that drives me crazy.
They're last in the country. You said, as you said last week, they got the only point guard in America who's got the same shooting percentage at the free throw line as
Right.
the 3-point. He makes 3 points at the same frequency he makes free throws.
Unbelievable.
And everybody says, somebody said, Terry Porter, an old friend of mine from St. Cloud State, one of the greatest shooters I've ever seen, Marshall, Minnesota, state champ 63, said me, why doesn't he have them practice? I think free throws. Well, I think they probably do, but I don't know what it is. But it's awful. I think I talked to him the other day. Why aren't you more depressed than you? Why you should be more depressed than you are? And he's he's just figures out a way to. I still think he has a chance, but we'll find out. He says, judge me. He says, when I got the job, I told Mark Doyle, judge me in year 4, and that gives him one more, and then we'll see.
One more after this one, and then we'll see. Yeah, I mean,
and
that's
I mean, if they're still terrible in year 4, he'll be fired. So,
yeah, well, that's that's pretty standard, but it's also, it's dangerous to keep. Sometimes it's dangerous to keep kind of kicking that down the line, because I mean, I think we've been waiting a while. If we're going across the way now to the women's program, we've been kind of waiting for that program to get traction, and then it's like, okay, wait a little bit more because we got all these freshmen, and it doesn't seem like it's happening on a consistent basis for Lindsay Whalen right now. They're just not very good. They score 41 points the other day.
41 points. I think they had. I looked it up. I think they scored 19 in the second half or something. I don't know. It's brutal. And I watched that team, and they do have some freshmen, but in Maya Brown, if she was playing with anybody, might have. Get some open shots and stuff, but they have no strength. The one big kid, Mishu, was, she's okay, and there's a Nano kid, but they don't bump anybody out of the way when they're going to get it. The physical guards come out and just beat them up, and you saw South Carolina play here last year. I'm not saying there's any South Carolina,
right?
Women's basketball is a lot more physical than it used to be. You're handling the ball. Somebody's going to come and bounce off you like they do in the men, and bounce you off the path you're trying to take and things like that. And they have no strength. But yeah, I would guess Lindsay gets one more year, don't you? But yeah, maybe not. What is this, 5 or 4?
This is year 5 for her, I think, wasn't it? 2018 was her first year, so.
Yeah, I'm wondering how she's handling. I don't know. She's. I talked to her, and she seems a little depressed. I mean, now I haven't talked to her, I think, once this year, but I don't think she's. Here's the other thing: transfer portal.
Yes.
Bad. Scalia left her.
Yes.
That hurt him. And Scalia was sitting for a while at Indiana, but now she's playing again. And they're 6th in the country, and they're coming in here, but she leaves them. So the Maya Braun and, say, well, I'm going to go somewhere and try to win. I mean, that's the trouble when things get this bad, keeping your team together. I mean, the men, Jamison Battle.
Right.
They got no NIL here at all. 0. I guess Parker Fox got some money that he brought with him from South Dakota, but that's it. They got nothing. And, so Jamison Battle's got 1 year left, and Wisconsin calls him up and says, we need a shooter. Is he going to stick around? Is he going to ride it out again for 1 more year or not? I mean, it's who stays if you got nothing to offer him, and you're losing games. That's the bad. I think in modern basketball, with the transfer portal, the bad teams are going to get worse.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes.
The bad teams are going to get worse because guys are going to go where they can either win or get some money. I don't know how they're supposed to line up their own deals, but it's all horse manure.
Well, they put together these collectives. I mean, it's,
But the collectives, Georgia's got a collective for football that has 3 full-time workers, and 99 of their players are getting NIL. Coach admitted 99 of them.
Yeah.
Up here, we got guys calling up and say, hey, you can talk to, Mo Ibrahim for 20 minutes for $100. That's does he want to talk to some guy for 20 minutes to make $100 for God's? I don't think you got to do that at Georgia. You just got to
No.
go up. You just got to go down around the corner to the office and get your check.
Right.
It's they're so far they are, and I think all the NIL money they're using for football. They're pumping it into football, trying to keep that up. Although I heard there's some volleyball. A couple of the volleyball players have it, but I mean, somebody told me who close to the Gopher program that the NIL was zero, and I confirmed that with somebody in the program who wasn't Ben Johnson. So
yeah,
anyway.
Well, I mean it's such a game changer. It's such a you combine that with the transfer portal, and you're right. It's the programs that are good, that are in major conferences, that maybe have had some level of success, but aren't in that top tier of college basketball or whatever sport, or in that conference, that are going to suffer because you're going to lose players, right? Because you can't, you're not winning, and then you're not going to be able to bring in the same caliber player. I mean, again, I think Ben Johnson's first year is a bad example because he lost so many players, and you can't replace that right away. But like who they've been able to bring in the portal has not come close to equaling what has gone out in the portal so far, and it's probably going to be hard for programs like that to recruit through the portal because that's where a lot of the NIL money is going to be, right?
Yeah, and the other thing is you get the guy to come in on a Friday night for a visit in November. And you're the historic old barn. Look at our beautiful old barn, man. It's been here since 1928. And I know there's only 3,100 people here tonight, but you should see it when it's full.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what else has killed them?
What's
Television. 70-inch television.
Yeah. It's hurt a lot of things.
There's nothing. It's always been, going to Gopher events has always been the hardest thing in town, right? Bad parking,
right?
Especially in the winter.
You got to want it. Yep. All their big sports. Yep.
Yeah. And Mariucci's actually got a couple of parking spots closer than, this place. They got 25 people there, and they still the ramp right across the street. You can get there. You can't get in it if you get there 2 hours early because they reserve that for people. So you got to walk 4 blocks at best on a cold, miserable night where you got a guy like me has a 50% chance of falling his fat on the ice. And, and then you get in there and there's nobody there. And now the other night, it was loud. I wasn't there, but it was loud. I was watching on TV, and there was enthusiasm, and it was about half full, but the odds are really stacked against this place right now, I think, and I don't think it's Ben Johnson's fault yet. But I mean, it's still, let's face it, if you wanted to pay $5 million or $6 million for your coach, you could have brought in Eric Musselman, and you'd be in better shape. Because don't worry, his dad had the NIL before there was it. 50 years, 50 years before
unofficial NIL.
We had name, image, and likeness a long time ago.
Yes.
And I think Eric kind of picked up on that a little bit. Eric would not settle for this. I can guarantee you. He wouldn't be losing transfers. He would be bringing them in. So, it's they decided to go with the inexperienced guy, and he's devoted to it and hardworking. And he has the recruiting class this year is okay. And according to Marcus, we're getting the second coming of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Right.
So, maybe. But, I mean, that guy comes in here next year, the 7-footer.
Dennis Evans, yeah.
Yeah, and they're 5-15, and he's getting $100 worth of NIL money. How long is he going to stay? It is a vicious cycle you find yourself in when you're bad right now in college basketball, don't you think?
Yes, I think that's the best way to sum it up. It's like it's harder it's harder than ever to break that cycle because who's going to stick around to break the cycle with you?
Yes.
There's no incentive to stick around. There's fewer incentives to stick around unless you just really like it there and you believe in what is being sold. And I think Ben Johnson sells it well. He's a good recruiter. He's a good, motivator, but that only goes so far. Like, people get tired of a bad situation. And if you've got opportunities, it's easier than ever to go find a better opportunity, or at least an opportunity that sounds better.
Yep, that's right. So, and Lindsay, I don't know. It's just, Scalia leaving on her that was a disaster. Minnesota kid who'd been close to the program and the whole thing, and all of a sudden, you got these freshmen coming in. You'd like to have a little leadership with them, see some positive. And if she leaves, and I don't blame her. She's at Indiana.
Right.
She's gonna end up with a Sweet 16 at a minimum. So
right.
I don't blame her, but it's a disaster for the program.
Patrick, let's finish up with the Wolves. Speaking of enthusiastic fans, things seem to be rocking pretty good over at Target Center right now. And I was reminded of a quote from Shawshank Redemption. Came out 1994. The second best movie to come out in 1994 behind Pulp Fiction. My guy Red in that movie said, "Hope is a dangerous thing, Patrick. Hope can drive a man insane." I think Wolves fans are starting to get that hope back. They're fifth in the West right now. This West is just so crowded. They go from 11th to 5th with a few wins. They got the Kings again now after beating them the other day. They beat Memphis. They beat New Orleans. So that, they lose to the bad teams, but they're competitive against these good teams. But it does seem to me, just watching them, catching them with the eye test. I was over there the other night watching them play. Starting to seem like they are figuring it out a little. They've got a closing group. Kyle Anderson's really good for them. He kind of holds it all together. Feels like they're starting to figure it out a little bit, but again, I don't know. I don't know if you can trust it.
Yeah, well, here's the thing about the NBA this year. I think the bad teams are way better than they normally are. You don't, it was always a league where there was a team that was 64-18 and a team that was 18-64, right?
Yes.
They're terrible teams, but the terrible teams aren't terrible. My basketball man, Terry Kunze, told me this either last year or the year before. He says, everybody's got good players now. He said, every team's got good players now. It's just a question of putting them together. Here's what worries me about them now is, Noel's an important guy, and Nas is an important guy, and they're both free agents. And,
yeah.
Right now, even with Cat not playing and Gobert missing games here and there, and Prince missing now, they got depth. They got about 8 guys. They got 8 or 9 guys, and they're able to. And you got the man, you got the leader, Edwards. And let's face it, when D'Lo decides to make 9 out of 12 threes, you're going to look pretty good, aren't you?
Yes.
So he's been shooting it pretty dang good for a month, as much abuse as we give him. And I think one other thing they've done, and the change here is, even when he's on the floor, and if Edwards is on the floor with him, Edwards has got the ball as much as he does, or maybe more. They've taken a lot of D'Angelo's ball handling. He doesn't have. He's not a playmaker, so they're not making him try to be a playmaker, right? He gets the ball and he'll run a pick and roll and do something like that, but he's not go out there and run the show anymore. They're kind of doing it by committee, and that seems to have made him better. But Edwards is, by NBA standards, a warrior. He plays 36, 38 minutes. He wants to play 36, 38 minutes. He's not looking for an excuse not to play tonight, like half the league is.
Hasn't missed a game this year.
And no, and he had a couple of banged up things that he could have sat, and he didn't. He likes to play. He wants to play. He's a beast, and have we found out if he's on the All-Star team yet? What are
Not
they waiting
yet.
for? When do they announce that?
That's got to be pretty soon.
week or something?
I think February 9th is when we find out, if I'm not mistaken. It's pretty soon.
So they wait till after the Super Bowl to have their.
I think that's right. I can't remember exact. No, the Super Bowl's the 12th, I think.
12th, so they must play the All-Star game on the 19th or someday.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But I mean, he's turned into a great player.
Yes.
He's early this year. He was like, he got on him. Finch had a couple of comments about him after games that he wasn't involved and stuff. I mean, he didn't say it that directly, but that was the hint he got. But boy, he's without Cat around, he's the man, and there's no doubt about it. And if Cat decides to ever play again, if he's not going to announce his retirement here pretty soon, how's he going to take this? Because he's the ship has sailed that he's the man.
Oh yes,
right.
Yes,
I mean the ship has sailed. It's he's going to have to figure. Well, Finch's quote from 6 weeks ago, and he said, "Well, we can put him over in the corner."
Yeah, right.
Was
right.
I mean, he's out of here this summer for sure.
I think so. I think they've got to trade him. Yeah,
but I don't know what the financial can you keep all those other guys if you trade him, or are you still in cap heaven because you got to carry his salary or take somebody back or something? I don't know.
Yeah, you've always got to take somebody back.
Trade him or not?
Yeah, you've always got to take somebody back. I mean, he's not eligible to be traded until the summertime, and who knows what their real plan is. But I mean, the big question is D'Lo, what you do with that, because you can just, unless you want to either extend him for something less or trade him before the deadline. I had a hard time thinking they're going to trade him before the deadline with how much he means to them right now. You could let that expire, and that's $30 million coming off your books. But how are you going to replace that? Like, you kind of lose those bird rights, you lose the kind of that salary slot. So it kind of depends on what they're going to do with D'Lo as to what they could afford beyond Cat.
I think you let D'Lo play her out. That's what I do. I think I try to keep. There's about 5 guys that they're bringing off the bench that I'd rather keep than him. And then you got to get another guard.
Yes, you got to get a point guard,
and they don't have a draft choice. So that's
that's the problematic part. That's one of the problematic parts of trading 4 draft picks in the Gobert trade. But but if you trade Cat, you can recoup some of that potentially. So I don't know. It's a complicated offseason. It's going to be. I mean, I'm interested to see how the year plays out now that they're playing better and Ant is taking this step. But this offseason is going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, can the Cat be traded before the draft? Is what I want to know.
I don't think so. I think he's July. I think he's a July trade candidate. I think you got to wait till after the draft. But they get around that by the pre-draft deals and all that stuff. So we'll see.
Well, who's really the last month has been great for is Finch.
Yeah, he's been good.
People were wondering, can he figure out how to put a team together with Rudy Gobert clogging up the middle, and they've kind of, they're letting both go. When Gobert's played, they've kind of, throw him a lob pass once in a while and have him get all the rebounds and set a pick once in a while. But I don't think they're logging themselves down, slowing themselves down, trying to get it inside to him anymore. Do you? If they throw a lot pass, they do, and if he can get a dunk, but they're not forcing it like they were earlier in the year. So.
No, they're not trying to make him more than he isn't. And to your point earlier about the ball in Ant's hands, I like that because they play with more pace when he's got the ball and they're making more decisive decisions. And then when it's D'Lo doing it, then it's like the change of pace and he's kind of doing his little, dipsy doodle into the lane, pick and roll type stuff. And so it's a nice kind of 1-2 instead of it being every possession is kind of a slow motion trip into the lane. So I think they've got something going. And then you're right. How does Cat fit back into it? Because I like their closing lineup, which is their starting lineup, I guess, usually with D'Lo and Gobert, Kyle Anderson, and Jaden McDaniels, because that gives you, a little bit of defense, gives you offense, enough guys that can create, make shots. It's a pretty good finishing 5. I mean, Cat's not going to mess it up necessarily, but he fits differently. You take him out, you put him in for anybody in that 5, and the dynamic changes.
And let me make this announcement after you and I say all these kind things. They will lose by 18 tonight to Sacramento.
Because that's what they do.
Let me just make that announcement, and we can all get used to it and get on with our lives knowing that they're going to lose tonight. So, but it's been fun. I mean, it's been amazing. And, people are showing up.
Yes.
That's what's incredible. Now, one way they're getting sellouts is they drop the capacity by 2,000. They just got a big empty area up there where they don't sell tickets, and then they call it a sellout. But still, I mean, they're getting 17,000. So how can you complain with their track record? And I mean, it's funny. I think they've discovered a young crowd for some reason. Yep. I don't know why. I think there's a lot of hipsters that like the NBA. You can, if you want to sit upstairs and sneak downstairs, you can. It doesn't kill you price wise. But anyway, yeah, the crowds have been good. So
that's a sport. It's the sport that's cool. That's it. It's like, you go there, you're close, you get to be seen, things like that. It's a different experience than any other game. I think that's part of it. I think that's driving some of the young crowd. So we'll see if they can keep it going. I think they've got something kind of figured out, but with this team, like you said, we always reserve judgment, and I wouldn't be surprised if you're right about tonight if they get I don't know about 18, but I think they might drop this one because Sacramento, those two game sets are hard.
I've always liked De'Aaron Fox, but how could they be third in the West? And I mean, they weren't going to make the playoffs, were they? Did people think they were going to make the playoffs?
No.
Third in the West?
Yeah.
The team that's gone in the tank now is the Pelicans. So
yes.
They're losing like crazy.
Because your guy Zion won't play anymore. He got hurt again. It's shocking.
What an Iron Man that guy is. He makes Buxton look like Cal Ripken Jr.
All right, sir. Appreciate it. We'll talk again next week.
All right.